Fair warning, I'm a bit of a nervous wreck trying to review this movie, so I'm going to do the best I can, but here goes. All right. Zero Dark 30 is, superficially, about the 10-year manhunt for Osama bin Laden led by the CIA. What it's actually about, though, whether the filmmakers know it or not, is the hunt for a scapegoat and its eventual discovery and butchering on a public altar. We are not watching a Hollywood thriller so much as a ritual sacrifice of a favored boogeyman. Underlying Zero Dark 30 is a sticky, timeless truth. Might makes right. The murder of bin Laden was not so much a tactical victory as revenge for wounding our pride on 9/11. Don't believe me? This film contains a glaring omission in plain sight. Never, not once, does the screenplay bring up capturing or arresting bin Laden. Not from the protagonist, nor her peers, nor the SEAL team sent in to get him. Why? Because bin Laden was tried and convicted in the public eye on 9/11, and he was left without friends that mattered to us. We all agreed, you, me, the characters in this film, and everybody else, even bin Laden's supporters, that when he was found, he would be killed. And that's the law of the street and the law of the jungle. We even threw ourselves an alibi, the kind not even a 2-bit screenwriting hack would have bought, that bin Laden went for his gun. Hardy har har, we all thought to ourselves, sure he did, but who cares? Nobody important, that's who. And so, in Zero Dark 30, we're watching a ritualized murderous film, restrained, intelligent, and factual as a Hollywood picture of this kind can be. It reminds me of David Fincher's Zodiac. Bigelow is a muscular talent who traffics in themes of adrenaline, stress, violence, and exhaustion. Those themes weave through the film and its characters, especially the lead played by Jessica Chastain, as the embodiments of obsessions within the American psyche. Forces of paranoia, fear, and xenophobia, which work into the characters like a drug, get them high and strung out, drive them to hostile and violent conclusions, then leave them exhausted shells suffering from adrenal come-down. The climatic raid is somber and intense. It plays more like a funeral dirge than an action scene, and it takes the time to show the children of bin Laden's compound, forever traumatized by the sight of stormtroopers murdering their parents in the middle of the night. I think Bigelow intends this to be an echo of the film's opening minutes, a soundtrack of emergency calls from 9/11 played against a black screen. Am I imagining that Bigelow equates every form of trauma as equal, regardless of the politics or body count? I hope not, because that's a good statement. But this movie scores a bullseye on my Achilles heel, a weakness for police procedurals and historically complex topics, and so I don't trust my own opinion. I believe that Bigelow's 1991 action flick, Point Break, is one of the greatest comedies of the male ego ever to see the screen. But I'm not sure anyone else sees that. I also think Zero Dark 30 is a critique of the nature of crime and punishment and our thirst for both. But I'm not sure anyone sees that either. So guys, I'm just going to turn it over. It's a disaster of a review. I tried doing 4 drafts of this, and literally I would write something, walk away, and 3 hours later I'd come back and want to write something else completely. And I honestly I cannot quite wrap my head around this one. I can't measure my own response to it. So I'm going to toss it to you guys. What did you think?
Yeah, sure. I felt very numb watching this. And, this film has been by far the most difficult movie you're right, Billy, to get a kind of a hold on, mostly because of the subject matter.
Yeah.
Actually, only because of the subject matter. So it's very difficult for me to come on here and say things about this movie without it being, politicized, really. It's very difficult. Joe, how did you feel?
You're going to deflect.
Yeah,
you're going to deflect to me. All right. Well,
I've been thinking about that too while he was reading. I'm like, how am I going to get Joe in here quickly?
Well, going quickly before Joe, you answered. I think it's fair. We should just agree. There's no way you talk about this movie without talking about your politics. So I agreed to myself to discard that any sense of
I don't want to come on here and talk about my politics.
Well, it's a movie that's all it's about.
The first thing I was going to say in response, Tom, when you deflected to me here, is that it's unfortunate that I think that we're the 4 of us here are of like minds. I believe politically. I mean, I know Billy. I know Billy and you, Tom. And I'm pretty sure I kind of know, roughly where Dave's coming from. And unfortunately, we don't have a dissenting voice here, so we are in double danger here of not being checked if we start to delve into politics here.
Absolutely.
What I mean?
Absolutely. Well, let's start with this simply then. The first half of the movie is basically mostly torture, and when I'm watching it, I wanted, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, how is she handling this? Is she coming at you like, well, in a pro torture way? Is it is she against the torture? And I thought, quite interestingly, I don't think she went either way. I think she kind of played it in right in the middle, where you yourself as a viewer can just hold on to your opinions about how you feel about torture. So you could watch those scenes if you don't like torture and say to yourself, boy, this is just god awful that we do this. And if you think that it's something that we should be doing, you could you could continue to feel that way. You're not going to be swayed. Did you guys feel the same way, during that first half of the movie?
Dave, why don't you chime in here, just so we could get a feel of it.
Let the commie Canadian
okay.
go over here. So, basically here it is, right? I mean, I really feel like in her mind she was probably trying to be balanced and probably trying not to take a side and just to say this happened. But by the same token, I feel like she really exploited the dramatic effect of torture.
Well, it's torture, Dave.
And it was like, hey,
dramatic effect.
Tom, but you can't treat torture off screen. So I think what Dave's saying is that she's just exactly what he's saying. She exploited the dramatic nature of it.
She said, hey, I'm going to use these dramatic scenes of torture, but I'm never going to actually address what that means.
But she could do that. But how does she know what? I mean, do you know how we torture? What methods we use to torture? Like her showing.
Yeah, the screenwriter is a really pretty brilliant. I'm sorry, Dave. What were you saying?
I was just going to say. I mean, there's congressional hearings about how all
I
that.
know, but you could visually look at it, to look at it on screen.
Right, it's a different experience.
Completely.
Well, the screenwriter is a reporter who has done many tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, and that's all based off of firsthand accounts.
I think what Dave's saying, and I think what you're getting at here, is that she doesn't make any value judgment on whether
she doesn't editorialize.
She doesn't make a statement on, like, the movie is not glaringly saying torture is bad or torture is good. And it's left,
it's really leaning towards the good.
Yeah. Well, you know what though?
I didn't get that feeling.
Well, because a lot of the information that they got in the film, came right from as a direct result of torture.
Of course.
Okay. So then so then the inference there is that.
I sort of disagree with that there, but this is exactly why this movie has me chasing my tail. Because first off, Dave, I think you're exactly right. I think in Kathryn Bigelow's mind, she's being very fair and balanced, not to appropriate.
Because she does offer. But here's the problem: two circumstances where the torture wasn't responsible for key information.
But that has nothing to do with anything. The deeper point that I think Dave's getting at is what I think it might have been Stanley Kubrick said. It's hard to make a war film that's not exciting because war is exciting. So how do you make an anti-war film?
Okay.
You can't make an anti-war film. So how do you make an anti-torture film? You can't, because it's exciting, because it gets your adrenaline up to watch it, no matter what.
Yeah.
Am I getting close to what you're talking about, Dave?
Yeah, and I mean, I think like one of the real problems that I have with how the torture ends up getting portrayed is that what we don't see all the blind alleys that these confessions, these quote unquote confessions, led to. It's never mentioned that so much of the information that they got from these detainees was utterly useless because they just said whatever they felt they needed to say, right?
For every 50 guys that got tortured and knew nothing, there was one guy who got tortured.
There were. They put in a couple. They put in a couple of small references about misinformation. Yeah,
but the film talks up Khalid Sheikh Mohammed,
especially the first couple years it was going on.
But she also presented.
But here's what the film doesn't touch upon, right? Like when we talk about it makes little mentions of bad information or blind alleys. It never makes mentions of the really big ones like Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
It's never
it does
hey,
bring
we
that
really
up too.
fucked up.
It does bring that up too, because in the middle of the movie, the CIA agents are all saying, "Look, I know everyone's like pussyfooting around, and no one wants to take a leap forward because of the whole WMD Iraq thing." They do bring that up. Also.
They're cramming all this stuff in, and it's represented.
It's flying by it
represented
like light
by a
speed.
couple of lines.
They keep name dropping Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, right? Who's like possibly the most famous detainee of all time, right? Like everybody saw the picture of this like dude in like a wife beater, getting
a hairy
right.
chest and
yeah, and I mean everybody knows that face and everybody knows that picture, and they name drop him all the time in the movie. It's KSM this, KSM that, and KSM lied his face off.
Right.
Like he was waterboarded 183 times according to congressional testimony, and basically confessed to every crime in the 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, and then of course afterwards when from a position of safety said, yeah, I lied about everything. I don't know what I told the truth about, what I lied about. I said whatever I had to say to get through it.
I think let me offer this. I think that well beyond any arguments about whether it's effective or not, it's just the simple moral one that it's wrong, and I don't think it should be done. And for what it's worth, I was morally opposed to torture going into this movie. I was physically and viscerally opposed to it coming out because I've never had to watch it happen in such extended scenes like that. And to the credit of the power of filmmaking, it put you so much there that it nauseated.
Okay, let me ask you this, Billy. If you were a guy who was listen, a lot of people were hurt on 9/11, and a lot of people had an axe to grind with 9/11. If you were one of those people who weren't sort of, listen, I don't want to say you're distanced from it, but if you had sort of like an anger and an
axe to grind, would I get satisfaction from watching that torture?
And not even would you get satisfaction of watching the torture, but would you accept that torture as a means to get the person who was responsible for doing what they did?
I would hope not, but I also think, I think that
I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, totally. And this is why I think that the movie, this is why it hits me in my Achilles heel, because I have a particular love for this kind of filmmaking in some regard, because it's almost like a Rorschach test. It just presents that thing and then you respond to it according to your nature, right? And I guarantee you there are people who are walking out of there who not only can justify it on the grounds that you just mentioned. I guarantee you there's a bunch of other people who have no association with 9/11 who would justify it on grounds of patriotism, that America kicks ass and we should
which is an axe to grind,
stop terror,
which is just another axe to grind, just a more trivial axe to grind, I guess.
This is the problem with this film, and I
guarantee you five different leanings see 5 different movies when they walk out of that thing,
And that's why this is a challenging piece of filmmaking, right? Because and that's why I have despite I'm going to say some stuff about this movie, but I have a tremendous amount of respect for it, simply because it provokes this kind of reaction in people.
Right.
And I think that on that level, it's a really successful piece of filmmaking, because I'm highly conflicted about it. Is on one hand, I get my back up about some of the political issues and how they're presented in this film, and some of the moral issues and how they're really kind of not presented in this film. But at the same time, I'm riveted by what is going on, and it's profoundly interesting, and it's really tough.
Because it's hard for Kathryn Bigelow to make a boring movie, and it's exciting, and even if it's not action-packed, it's fascinating to watch what happens, to the point that let me tell you why I also think that this movie is challenging to the world at large. I'm reading this book on the Holocaust right now, and people were not allowed to take the SS troops who manned the concentration camps were not allowed to take pictures on threat of going to prison. People who have talked about torture in the CIA have gone to prison, right? This movie comes out, and Congress gets up in a tizzy and demands that the filmmakers come before them and explain themselves how they got this information. Hold on. You're pissed that people are talking about torture and showing it on screen, but you're not actually pissed that it's going on. You're not actually pissed that it's taking place. You're just pissed because someone's blowing the lid on it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Of
Like
course.
everyone gets distracted by the fact of the film instead of the fact that it's going on in the first place. You know?
And that's just a step away from censorship, really. It really is.
Well, it's taking something that really hit home for so many people and really just it hit something like hit a direct nerve, and it's I don't want to say capitalizing on that, but it's using that to take liberties with our rights, and that's exactly what Bush did to get us into the war, first of all, and that's what is making this film so effective. And to call it exploitation is not that far from the mark.
No, it is. It is an exploitation.
Yeah, I mean, and
you have to accept
she's a
that
director with great taste, but it's an exploitation movie because she's exploiting our personal, involvement with these very deeply personal feelings about something that's very powerful still, and something that's obviously still raw. So many years later.
Yeah, and
I honestly couldn't. I was just going to say, I honestly couldn't help comparing it to Django Unchained and Lincoln, because both are about such important topics of our experience, and Django handles it in a totally flippant, exploitative way. Lincoln handles it in a completely respectful yet still exploitative way. And here's, I feel like Zero Dark 30 kind of treads that line of a super duper thriller,
it almost
like
tries...
Homeland on Showtime, and it's exciting, but which is an exploitative thing. But it's also, I really genuinely believe in their minds, Kathryn, Bigelow, and I can't remember the
Bowles.
I can't remember
Bowles, I believe.
Right.
Yeah, I believe that they're doing their best to be provocateurs.
Well, you stated it with when you presented the Kubrick quote, is that you can't make a boring war movie, So I mean, basically, what she's doing is making the most tasteful war movie that she can, but
it still doesn't matter because
it's a movie. But here's the thing: it's
like somebody could watch Full Metal Jacket, and as much as an anti-war film is, like, somebody will go out and join the Marines the next day because they think that's cool. Like that was cool what they did.
Because they love Gunnery Sergeant Harmon.
Yeah, it's true, right? Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I actually firsthand, I know guys who joined the military because they love Full Metal, not literally like
insane.
a 1-to-1, but they love that shit. And when they're out of when soldiers are hanging out at home, they're playing Lee Ermey. Is that his name, Lee Ermey?
R. Lee Ermey.
R. Lee Ermey. They're playing that clip of him, harassing the recruits over and over again, and they know it line by line.
Because they're forming their identity around this culture. But here's where I walked out of this movie, and basically, I look. You made a really important point there, Billy, about a scapegoat and justifying murder and everything, which I want to get to. But my first reaction to this was I thought it was dubious, I mean, first of all, I said the first thing I said was, they consolidated 10 years and a whole organization into one person, which is, it's essentially is Lincoln, what you're saying, you focus on one hero, because just like we were talking about with Lincoln, just like in Lincoln, it's one hero, that's the Campbellian myth. That's what we can. So as soon as you distill this down to the hero myth, then almost all these other arguments fall away, because it becomes
you're in the realm of pure mythology.
Yeah, it becomes exploitive. So it's like the Bible, right? Like if you change like 3 words in the Bible, 3 words in a what the hell do you call them, Billy? A passage,
scripture,
whatever. Proverb, whatever. Like it could change. Like there's people who study the Bible who change 3 words. It changes the whole meaning of a whole parable or whatever, So if you consolidate, a whole organization into one pretty redhead. I mean, it kind of, if you take a step back from it, you got to just look at this as a movie and not a historical document. And then all of a sudden, I'm finding myself like, wow, shame on me for looking at this as factual.
And it's really,
Yeah.
Right.
it's really, really difficult, Joe, to, I mean, in my opinion, anyway, to compare anything to the Bible, because I mean, what's in the Bible is true.
Bible's awesome.
Well, you see, and that's the thing, and the Bible's it's awesome. Exactly. But and that's the thing, like you can like it's been interpreted how many times, you know, and
Yeah.
like
Yes,
That was
thousands.
you
and,
just had
and,
a
and
point.
sometimes the same sentence is interpreted for two different causes, you know, opposing causes. So, all right, so I mean, that's just one. That's just, you know.
Can I comment on two things that you said there? The one is ostensibly that person is really real. That person, there really is one person who in the Pakistan CIA office was the one who was the squeaky wheel insisting on pursuing the stuff. Apparently that's very, very real. And
Okay.
she's still an operative, believe it or not. So take that for what it's worth. I mean, I don't know, but even if it's only of dubious merit, no Hollywood screenwriter can resist latching onto that and pumping that one character full of mythology, as Joe was saying.
Right, but
The other thing is that
there's
if you make
people who are in the CIA who said that, look, and again, this is dubious information again. This is the
Yeah.
problem with media and politics in general, is that there's people in the CIA who insist that it was the efforts of a whole organization
right,
10 years, you know what I mean? I mean, yes, it's probably based on one person. And so a screenwriter, you know, Billy, you look at a screenwriter and you smash everything into the formula.
Yeah, totally. I mean, this is where, again, this movie has me chasing my tail because I know all of that, and then I go and read accounts where the Navy SEALs go, "Oh yeah, when we got back from the mission, there was this one CIA agent who we always saw hanging around, and she was the one who, was telling us all this stuff, and she was there waiting anxiously when we got back to find out what had happened, and she wanted to see the body personally because she was the one who, was so like there's this real person there, and it's."
Right.
It has me fucking chasing my tail, and I can't help it. The other thing is what you just said about historicity versus filmmaking, and it's like, if you make a movie about Napoleon, no one's going to give a fuck. No one takes Napoleon personal anymore, right? Because it's got the distance of time. But this stuff, it's hard for me. When I initially saw the trailer, I just rolled my eyes and went, just, what a bunch of exploitative garbage. But at the same time, you go, well, fuck it, man. I mean,
Yeah.
history is happening now.
Yeah.
History, in 50 years, no one's going to give a fuck about the reality of this. So how do you make a movie that is true to some sort of, mood or, some theme of our time?
Well, I think exactly what's happening here and what you guys were talking about earlier is exactly what the merits of doing something like this is that it opens a discourse, and I think that's what's ultimately is important. I mean, to have, to mythologize something, what's mind blowing to me, and this is sort of tangential, I guess, is that we're mythologizing things that are a year past or 2 years past. I mean, it's like, it's crazy.
That's insane.
It's not totally crazy. I mean, John Wayne was assaulting Iwo Jima while World War II was still underway.
That's true.
I mean, Hollywood has never been shy about jumping on, the mythology bandwagon while mythology is still being made.
Those films came out during the war, Bill.
They always had war films. They always had, anti-Nazi adventure films and stuff
So
like that.
this thing
going
with
on.
like Oliver Stone doing W or Bigelow doing Zero Dark 30, almost
Nothing new.
Nothing new.
If anything, these days are even more respectable and respectful
Wow.
than it was in the
Well, go. I'm sorry, Joe. Go.
No, Tom, go ahead, man.
No, please go.
All right, I was just gonna one of the major themes of your intro there, Billy, was legitimizing murder, or what was your phrasing there?
That's basically
Ritual
it.
murder or whatever. And
Ritual
I
sacrifice.
think I would love to hear Dave's take on that, because as a pseudo outsider,
he's got his fingers crossed for the Canadian Reich to rise.
I mean, that is look. I understand it. And I'm not. I have no conspiratorial notions about 9/11 or Bin Laden, I pretty much take it at face value. And so I have no doubt really in my mind that Bin Laden was largely responsible, had a hand in it, and certainly was the criminal that the United States and the world was pursuing. So I mean, I don't. Yeah, I mean, but this idea of like ritual sacrifice and all, for sure, man, for sure. I mean, because there's no, what do we get out of it? Like, how effective was he as the commander in chief of Al Qaeda at that point? I mean, a lot more effective than we thought, certainly. But really, how effective was he? And how effective was Al Qaeda as an organization?
The idea that there was never even any talk of arresting him and putting him on trial. I mean, I get it.
No,
like,
and why?
The world's probably a better place with the guy dead.
Right.
So what? Right? Who cares? But it's still. We still accept a level of
civility,
wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Right. And not only that, but just even doing, even having a trial or something, or some kind of the information that you could get out of a man like that.
Well, you're not gonna. I mean, you're not.
Who knows though? I mean, you could say
this is
no.
why. I mean, it really honestly makes sense.
Well, Bill, they just could have tortured him.
Well, the thing is that it shows the character of people. If in their darkest moments they don't abandon the principles by which they stand.
Exactly. This is why I don't know how you guys felt. I remember the morning I woke up and turned on my computer and saw the headlines that he'd been killed. I didn't rejoice. I don't rejoice in another death. And I don't care if he's the biggest asshole on the planet. I mean, if it was someone who did something personally to me, like Joe was talking about earlier, yeah, I would probably rejoice, But, I would have liked to have seen him captured and put on trial. It's idealistic, but so what?
Again, listen, it shows the strength of it's easy to stand by your principles in times that are comfortable, but it takes a cliche, right? But it takes somebody. It takes.
There should be rising music behind you right
now. Claude, can you rise? Pull up the music. It takes a lot of strength to stand by those principles in times that are trying, and that when I saw what happened, I was like, wow, that is an inevitable bit of ugliness, because you knew it was, of course it's coming. I mean, of course, and it's understandable, but.
And even people it was shocking to me. People even who I considered very, sort of moderate in their views of the world were celebrating. And I was like, man, that
just
raises
celebrating because they're just programmed to celebrate.
No. I'm talking about people who you would never think would never respond at the joy of, with joy at another person's death, even the biggest asshole on the planet, So it's just weird
because by the time his death came, it became part of our belief system. It became a part of our belief system. Yeah, he's a. You know what I mean? It's like you don't question your belief system. It's just that's what it is. So it wasn't. There was nothing bad. I mean, the first time I heard the president say "kill" and "murder," I was like, But at the same time, I understand why he's saying that. But it's strange to hear the leader of your own country say, "We're going to kill him."
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's not the American principle that I.
Right. And it didn't sit.
That's the Wild West, but that's not the founding principles at all.
That never sat well with me. It never ever sat well with me.
And again, guys, and
again, that to me was just to sidetrack.
You bunch of tree hugging.
Well, yeah, we're in danger.
I've always found that,
we're not being checked,
No, when it happened, I always thought that it was important to really understand. First of all, you really want to understand why people would want to do that. To begin with, why would 21 people or 19 people hijack airplanes and slam them into buildings in our country? That's what I want to know. Why would they want to do something like that? What did we do to make people want to do that to us.
Do you-
So, but this guy was
That's
using,
another show.
Yeah,
How
I
long
know,
do
but
we have on
okay,
this
but
show?
we're not going to talk about it. But this guy, this president,
But it's true, Tom. But that's what's at
But
the
he
heart
was
of it.
using language to sidetrack people from, I think, even wanting to think about things like that. So if you could rally up an angry mob and say we're going to kill, I mean, that's the easiest thing to do.
Well, here, let me point out another side of this movie then, and this is why this again it just has me chasing my tail. You've got a female director. I think that Kathryn Bigelow is a woman of considerable insight. I think she's a director of considerable insight, and she knows she has to work the Hollywood system. But consider that in interviews, she has mentioned she was surprised how many women were working at the CIA on these kinds of projects, right? And consider also that by the time
Meaning
she
what?
was-
What does that mean?
there's a lot of women working at
But
the
what
CIA.
what does
on
that
these
mean?
intelligence-
What do you mean by that? Like, there's a lot.
Oh, here's where I'm going
Okay.
with it. By the time of this operation, there's been a sort of a boys' club that has agreed to, do a cursory invasion of Afghanistan and do a half-assed job of that, and then devote all resources to Iraq. No one gives a fuck about Osama anymore. No one's following the Bin Laden case. No one's doing any of that, except for this one woman who's sticking with it because, in a way, she's the only one who's actually remembering the reason all of this got started in the first place. So she's a character of tenacity, and I'm sort of quoting Kathryn Bigelow from interviews in this, but she sees a lot of the story as the tenacity of someone who is not following the trends of war and all of that and sticking to the original plan. She has a case to finish, and she's going to do it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that sounds like Daniel Day-Lewis and Lincoln.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's like,
Here,
yeah.
and on that point, and maybe just sort of following the general thread here, but way back in like October of 2001, Noam Chomsky wrote an article about 9/11 and about America's response and how America and the world ought to respond. And he believed at that time very strongly that this was a time for law and order, and this was a time for law enforcement, and this was a task for police and intelligence.
It's a criminal
officers.
case.
Yeah, this is a job for police and intelligence officers, and it was an investigative task.
Detective work.
And it was exactly, and this was not a task for soldiers and smart bombs and drones.
Drones,
No,
right?
because that's all money making bullshit.
And in a way, and I'm surprised, and this is one of the things that disappointed me about the film, is in a way the film makes that case and says these wars were really kind of unnecessary to some extent. Certainly Iraq, arguably Afghanistan, and really what.
Well, sure, the boogeyman wasn't gotten by a grand siege with tanks and armies. It was taken by 2 helicopters and 20 guys who went in there and grabbed
Quiet helicopters.
I read that same Chomsky article, and from like immediately after that, and I just was telling everyone the way it's going to go down is CIA intelligence and a SEAL team. That's the only way you're ever going to get this freaking guy.
And
10 years later, 2 wars and all of this nonsense. How did they end up getting him?
Yeah,
It's CIA intelligence and a SEAL.
Well,
team.
you could just
and
be
Chomsky
you could
is
just be
ultimately
clear about it.
vindicated here, right? I mean, and that's. I wish the film stopped for a second and said that point of view is vindicated. And maybe it doesn't need to. Maybe it doesn't need to stop and spell it out for everybody. But I kind of, I was watching, and that's one of the things I thought. I thought, man, I bet you. I haven't read anything about it, but I mean, I would love to know what Chomsky thought of that. I mean, besides his probable outrage at extrajudicial murder of
Chomsky's outrage at everything.
Well, yeah, but he backs it up pretty damn good most of the time.
Yeah,
I do feel that this script points a lot out by omission. For
Sure it
instance, I brought up the point of there's no discussion about arresting him. right? I think that's deliberate on their part. I think they deliberately they're leaving it hiding in plain sight. And I think that's another one. I was thinking, why are we not seeing anything about the wars? And I thought, you know what? It's because they're raising their middle fingers to the very issue of those two wars. That was my humble opinion on their intention.
Okay, so to me, this is how it is. A critical moment of the film, and I hate, I don't want to fucking give away the ending here, but we all know how the film ends. but like
Wait, the
it's
ending.
really- no, but when when Maya is
The dancing girls pop out of the cake.
no when Maya's on the plane and
It was all a dream.
it's over, it's done. Some of them are dead. Her mission is complete. And she kind of has that breakdown on the plane, and to me that was probably the most important
Yes.
part of.
Because what is the line? What is the line the pilot says to her?
Yeah.
It must be a pretty
Where do you want to
important
go
line.
now, or
Where do you want to go now?
Yeah.
And that's the last line in the movie. And then she sits and just starts crying. And it's like, yeah, where the fuck do you want to go now?
And when
Was
you
it-
talk about omission, this is where the omission started to build up for me, because when she's crying, I think it's pretty. The film makes it pretty clear what her sacrifices have been. In terms of, she was right out of high school into the CIA. Her only assignment has been the Bin Laden file. She's given up any semblance of a social life, romantic life. She has lived and breathed the Bin Laden file from day one. And so the film's very explicit about those sacrifices, but I also assumed that she was crying over the other sacrifices of her moral integrity and the things that she had to do in the torture and the how she desensitized herself to that, because early on she's clearly horrified by what's going on, and then later in the film she's like, fuck, we lost the detainee program, I need more information, I need to, we needed that. And so I like to think that she's upset about that, but that's the one thing the film never really mentions, that it was a sacrifice of hers, and it's doing so by omission, maybe. But
I think
that sounds like
that movie
to
just
me. That sounds like
it's
a
just
bit of apologetics to me, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that. I wrote here that I would have been a lot. I want to see Spielberg's version of this movie, and I'm not kidding, because
It's funny you said that, Dave, because I want to see Bobcat Goldthwait's version of this movie.
right.
No, but
I'd like to see Mel Brooks' version of the movie.
I'd like to see Harmony Korine's version.
seriously, look at Munich, okay. Pretty much every character in that film who was part of that Mossad hit team had this understanding that they were damned because of what they were doing. And they had put their souls on the altar of patriotism and an ideology, and they were aware of it. And if they weren't aware of it at the moment they made that contract, they became aware of it later in the film.
My theory on that is that if you're not going to make the Bin Laden movie with the cooperation of former CIA people and all the powers of Hollywood stepping on the wrong toes. So I think that their deal with the devil to make this movie was exactly what you're saying. I think it is. I think that their form of protest against being more vicious was to use omission to point things out. But you know what I'm saying? Like you're not going to get the cooperation of the army on your movie if you're making fun of the army through your whole movie. You know?
But I just I would have liked to have I would have liked to feel like Maya was agonizing over this a little more, or that anybody was agonizing over this a little more, and there was a little more hand wringing. Like, I know if Spielberg made it, it would be like an hour longer, it would have like 10 denouements, and just be out of control. But I would have. I appreciated the moralizing of Munich before it got overbearing. Like, I think, you know what I mean? Like, there was a point in Munich where I appreciated the moralizing. Then it just went.
See, that's funny. I actually like the approach that this one does a little bit better than Munich, just because I don't like moralizing being in your face. But
Well,
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to what you were saying before, Dave.
but I would have liked some.
How did she handle because I haven't seen The Hurt Locker. How did she handle The Hurt Locker? Has anyone seen it?
I've seen it. I did not think it was that great. I thought this was a much better movie.
Yeah,
actually.
I agree. This was a farce.
And how did she play her politics in that one?
She didn't.
She didn't?
It was surprisingly, it seemed to be just a straightforward, almost action movie. Am I imagining that?
Kind of like,
I mean, it definitely
like Point Break.
not nothing is like Point
kidding.
Break. That is
I'm kidding, compadre.
No, that you're talking about one of the
Raw.
most awesome films ever made. Point Break is an opera.
Are you being sarcastic, Billy?
No, I love Point Break.
Yeah, no, I do too.
Point Break. Love that.
That's why I
mean,
like
it's
that.
It's clearly a bad movie, but it's one of the best bad movies ever made.
Billy, do you like Michael Mann films?
Billy, you like to hang around the gymnasium?
Billy, have you ever seen a grown man naked?
Did you ever watch
Hang around.
Gladiator movies?
We'll do Michael Mann sometime. I promise.
All right.
But I just going back to the original issue of this is just a movie, right? And I think that I could really make a case for the form of this movie. I got to be honest with you. I loved the form of this movie. I love police procedurals. I love dialogue that does not coddle you. If you miss something, you're kind of fucked. It moves fast. People don't behave in an excessive emotion and stuff like that. They behave like professionals. And the overall form, I feel like it is a template out of Greek tragedy and film noir, which is a character becomes obsessed with something and they will move heaven and earth to achieve it. In this case, it's the murder of another human being. And there is untold damage done along the way. And even the resolution of that, the gaining of it, leaves the hero feeling perhaps like they're a lesser person than when they started the movie. And I do think that that's the sort of underlying theme that they're going for, the director and writer. Here's my problem with it. We've seen that movie 1,000 times before. Do we really need one about Bin Laden? I mean, if you're going to make this movie, is that what do you guys think? Am I seeing something accurate?
I think that the movie,
and is it irresponsible to be making a movie?
Well, I think the container is the vehicle for, is the excuse for the content here, as opposed to, the vice versa. Like I don't think the point is to be making an experimental movie, right? So she's taken the formula to get, like, the point of it is to sort of exploit our feelings on what happened with the hunt down and the killing of bin Laden, So I think that the objective of the movie would have been undermined if she did try to, shake up the formula in any other way. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, it's like what you're saying. It's sort of the hero myth, film noir, which is a nice observation, but the point of it is to nudge at and poke at these feelings that we're all so tied to as Americans and I guess Canadians.
And this is, I know, Canadians are the bloodiest bastards in these two wars. Let me tell you, you got a lot of answering to do in heaven, Dave. Here's the other thing is that this movie is definitely, Joe, what you just said. It's not aimed at people who watch a lot of Michael Haneke movies, right?
This is a Haneke, though.
Well, hang on a second. I'm really curious to hear what your thoughts are on that.
But it's the beginning of the film.
What is that?
Go ahead, say your piece, but we'll talk about.
Oh no, it was just that it is.
It's
a multiplex movie. I mean, those movies don't take a lot of risks, and they're not meant to offend people. In a way, I kind of hope that it successfully gets people, the suburbanites going to the mall to see this movie, to think about shit that they haven't thought about before. I mean, do you guys think that that's realistic? Am I imagining
Well,
that that's...
I think that it does in a sense, but I think what the danger is exactly how you started this whole conversation, which is that we're in danger of moralizing murder, and that's what I think that's what the main the crux of the conversation is. I actually, because you can get them, you can get a zillion asses in the seat, and it would be great if you could be a bit subversive and have them questioning their own morality or what the new morality is. But I don't think that this quite does it. I think that what you're saying is it's moving into something dangerous. And then on the other hand, you're also right by saying that you can't be making fun of the army the whole time in the movie and expect the army to participate in it. You know what I mean? So I think there's a little bit of hair splitting going on here in a lot of ways, and I think that what Dave had mentioned before is that she's trying to present sort of a balanced view of this, almost straight down the line.
Hair splitting is exactly the word I would use to describe this movie.
Yeah.
Dave, I'm sorry. What was the Michael Haneke ripoff? I'm dying.
Okay, well, before I get into that, I just wanted to say that I think that part of my problem with this movie ultimately is that it's going to confirm your biases, right? Because it doesn't, any stand it takes is by omission. So there's a really good excuse for you, if you're pro torture and pro all that stuff, to say, yep, I'm vindicated by this movie. And if you're against it, you can make an apologetic argument for why this film is against that sort of thing and have your view vindicated. And I don't know whether I should really respect that or not. Like, it's tricky for me because on one hand, I would have liked to see a stand get taken. On the other hand, presenting it just saying, them's the facts and this is what happened. And not just really.
So the point is to just to kick up the dust again and have people talking about it, or have to bring up the controversy, which begs the question: is it, again, how much exploitation went into this? I mean, is it purely mercenary? Does she have an agenda? I don't. It's difficult to know. I don't know.
It's really, really, really difficult. And that's the problem, right? Is that it's almost impenetrable in a way, right? Because you can, in the absence of Kathryn Bigelow coming out and saying this was my intent and this is how I feel about the issue, you can, and we have here this very evening, successfully argued for several different viewings of this film. I don't think it's necessarily changing minds. I think it's confirming biases on the whole.
Guys, I do want to start wrapping this up in a couple minutes, although I still am extremely intrigued about Dave Pace's Michael Haneke comment.
Okay, so way back in the day, there was this movie, well, I guess way back in the day, 2002, there was this movie, and now I'm starting to think that it wasn't Michael Haneke that directed the short, so I could be utterly horrifically wrong. And it seems I am utterly horrifically wrong, so I'm going to shut up about it. But here's the thing: I was so sure it was Haneke because it was so genius. But anyway, there's this. It was a series of short films, and it was a bunch of. Sean Penn did one. A bunch of other directors.
This is for the 9/11 thing.
Yeah, and
he did a short on there.
So why is he not credited on here? Because I was sure he did it, and I was sure that the one he did was almost entirely a black screen, and it was just playing audio. Right? It would just be audio from the firefighters' radios and the police radios and 911 calls, and the only times you would ever get a moving image on the screen, anything but a blank screen, it would just really quickly cut to a body falling. And it was probably the most devastating portrait of 9/11 I've ever seen. Like,
yeah,
it
sounds like Haneke.
really
Yeah, I gotta
tough
look into
to watch.
Wow.
And when I saw the beginning of Zero Dark 30, I'm like, holy shit, here we are again. You know, I've seen this, and
Jeez.
I don't see Haneke credited at all in this film, but I was positive it was him.
Huh. Interesting.
So I don't really get that, but I was I had the DVD. I was absolutely in love with
Well,
that.
you don't have to credit somebody whose idea you steal, you know. so.
No.
You just go and steal it.
Just-
Just ask Quentin
I'm-
Tarantino. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't ask, may I take this from you, please? You just punch him in the face and take his wallet.
Hey, you know, guys, what a
Credits for that September 11th collection of September 11th shorts, and I can't see Haneke on there at all. So.
what a weird year for all, you know, for these, you know, for the Academy Awards and the Golden Globe Awards. I mean, you're getting all these like political dramas being nominated for Best Picture. It's like Argo, Lincoln,
Yeah.
Zero Dark 30. You
Yeah,
know, you
there's
think
this
it's even Django Unchained.
There's a convergence of reality. I guess this is ongoing convergence of reality and fiction that's happening here, and I don't probably never more evident in what's happened with the Oscar nominations.
It's just really interesting. It struck me funny the other day when I was thinking about it. Hey guys, listen, I'm gonna start wrapping this up here. I really appreciate everyone coming on and giving all of your souls to this you know, interesting film. Billy, Joe, Dave, thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate it.
Hell yeah.
And it turns out that it was a Mexican director, Alejandro Gonzalez. So I was utterly fucking wrong.
Joe, it's great to have you back on the show, dude.
We'll forgive you, Dave. It's good to be back here, Tom. I thank you for having me back on.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot, man. Well, the Cutting Room Movie Podcast is produced by Joseph Christiana and Thomas Detloff. And you can check us out on Facebook at the Cutting Room fan page. And you can follow me, Thomas Detloff, on Twitter at Cutting Room Show. You can get all kinds of Cutting Room information on there. Until the next time, everyone, we are over and we are out. Ciao.
Tune in next time to satisfy more of your strange desires. The Cutting Room Movie Podcast. We do chicken right.